Welcome back to the Flying with the Flock podcast, the best place to get all of your Eagles and other NFL related news. I'm your host, Matt, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are currently a few weeks, I want to say 3 weeks out from the first game of the NFL regular season, and we've gotten through the first weekend of preseason games, meaning that football is officially back. So we can all start to cheer, we can all start to clap, but before we get too in depth into that, have you all give me a moment of your time to sit back and enjoy this episode where I will go over some of the public practice notes and the experience that I had, some important Eagles news related to injuries, and finishing up some of the battles happening at training camp. Finally, we'll also go over a lot of we'll go over some division standings, who I think will finish where and with what record. And also going over hold-ins, holdouts, with the list of hold-ins and holdouts getting very short now. And finishing up with a very short segment of Big Trouble in Big D. But before we get started, if y'all could leave a like and subscribe down below, that would be much appreciated. All your support means a lot, and I definitely see it when y'all leave a like and subscribe, and also just even watch the episode at all. So it does not go on, it doesn't go unnoticed. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So this past weekend, I believe it was Sunday, the 10th, was the Eagles' public practice, and I went just to watch practice myself, see what I could do, and see what notes I could take. So I ended up in the So I originally went and was trying to get into the lower bowl, as I normally try to get to in regular season games, but I got there a little bit late, so it was kind of hard to find seats together with my group. So what we ended up doing was going up to the suites area and sitting in the, not in the boxes themselves, but in the suites seating. I believe that's more of like the second level seating right there. And it was actually a really nice experience. You got a really nice view of what was going on during practice, and not just one portion of the entire practice. I do feel like for me and for taking some notes, this was ultimately the better experience because I got to see what was really going on. So originally I had thought that A.J. Brown was going to return during this public practice because he walked out in pads and stuff. But ultimately he was off to the side doing some training. Same thing for Zach Baun. He was there for warm-ups, but ultimately stepped off to the side and did some private workouts. The crowd was going. It was really rumbling during 11 on 11s, which we might as well just jump right into because the rest of my notes really aren't that stellar. But one concern that I've had, and it continues to be a concern, is Jalen Hurts' confidence in this new offensive system. It seems like he's holding on to the ball too long rather than anticipating where the defense is going to be compared to his receivers. He did have quite a few good throws, some to Devontae Smith, some to Dallas Goedert. But ultimately, I felt like he was missing this big play machine down the sideline, that being A.J. Brown. So understandable that he wasn't taking too many deep shots down the field. And it seems like he was just working on more accuracy and getting to the first down marker rather than trying to absolutely blow them out of the water. Following that up, Saquon didn't have too big of a day. I mean, he did have one big run where I do feel like that if they didn't call the play dead, that he would have ripped it off for close to 50 to 40 yards on a touchdown. So that was fairly impressive. Overall, I do feel like the experience was very nice. Obviously, I got into the suites area, which meant that I got higher class food. I got Little Caesars, so I will take that any day of the week at this point. Overall, the Eagles' defense really looked stout and looked tough. Obviously, we will see how it does up against more NFL offenses during the joint practices today and tomorrow against the Cleveland Browns. And ultimately, I do feel like the offense is going to be a little bit more of a concern starting out. And as long as Jalen can find his rhythm and gets confident in this offense, I do feel like everything will be okay. Also, as long as Kevin Patula does not, who is the offensive coordinator, just in case you weren't aware, if he does not dial up enough run plays, he's going to put way too much stress on Jalen's arm. And I just hope he doesn't get pass happy and continues what works for this Eagles offense, that being pounding the rock constantly. Another bigger thing that came out of Eagles public practice was Landon Dickerson's injury, that being his meniscus injury. He went down within the last 10 minutes of practice. It was kind of scary at the moment. Looking at it now, the idea is for Landon Dickerson to ultimately get a minor surgery, I guess you could call it, or minor something or other on his meniscus in order to get him back for week 1. It doesn't seem to be anything major, so I'm not too concerned. If this episode was made 2-3 days ago, we probably would still be speculating. But since we know that he's going to have a minor procedure on his meniscus, he is most likely going to miss a few weeks. He's going to be week to week, and then he'll ultimately either be able to play week 1 or be able to play within those following weeks, following week 1. It definitely was scary at the moment, and I'm happy to hear that Landon Dickerson is healthy. He is one of the very important parts of this offensive line. I feel like behind Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson is one of the more important pieces of this offensive line, and that's no shade at Cam Jurgens, because he's still working his way up. He still needs to prove himself as his top-tier offensive lineman, like a Landon Dickerson, like a Jordan Mailata, like a Lane Johnson. But ultimately, I do feel like he can get to that point. And same thing goes for Tyler Steen. We haven't seen him in enough of a starter role for me to really pass judgment on how important he is. So ultimately, he's going to rank at the bottom of the totem pole. So at the end of the day, I'm happy to say that Landon Dickerson will be back soon enough, and that this injury will probably not impact the Eagles as much as I originally thought it might. And at the end of the day, that's a sigh of relief for this entire Eagles fan base. The injury bug is still in Philly a little bit, though it's getting a little bit better. All these people that I'm about to say are out, yes, but are trending to coming back soon. Zach Bond, back contusion. There's an idea that he might be back maybe even today during joint training camp. Same thing for A.J. Brown, who's battling a hamstring injury. Both of them were practicing off to the side in full pads with trainers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that these guys are taking limited reps and also still working off to the side just to work on these different injuries. Running back Montreal Johnson Jr., hamstring. Defensive tackle Byron Young, groin. All have been out for a little bit now, and hopefully A.J. Brown and Zach Bond can return within a few days during this joint practices against the Cleveland Browns. Alright, so let's look at some of these battles, which I would like to say are starting to clear up. So, obviously, we covered last week that the right guard position is Tyler Steens. It was already announced. So, let's go over who would be the starting left guard if Landon Dickerson does not return week 1. Well, it would have originally have been Kenyon Green, who we traded for during the offseason in the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade. But he unfortunately got injured during last week's preseason game and is also week to week. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Eagles swing right guard backup Matt Pryor over to left guard. He has more starting experience, more everything at that position than, say, a Trevor Keegan, who's like the third string right guard, and Brett Toth, who's the backup center. Both of them could, in theory, play left guard, but I just feel like Matt Pryor would be the safer choice week 1 if we had to come out without Landon Dickerson. Looking at some of the other battles, the starting safety battle, it's seeming that Sidney Brown has kind of, not that he's locked it up, but that he's shored up his stance in the eyes of Vic Fangio, which is very important. He did that through taking a lot of reps at training camp and making sure he was on the field. Andrew Mabuka, now, he's a wonderful talent. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing him maybe coming in to allow Sidney Brown have a little bit of a break during a game. But ultimately, I do not feel like he will be the starter week 1 at this point, especially with the limited amount of reps he's had up to this point in front of Vic Fangio, which ultimately tends to be a lot more important. Which you can also see in our edge rusher battle. I originally had a Jalen Hunt versus Aziz Ojulari. Ultimately, it seems like Jalen Hunt locked that up. So I moved on to the edge rusher 3 spot. Who's going to be that rotational guy? And we still have Aziz in here, but we also have Josh Uche, who has also gotten a lot of praise from Vic Fangio during training camp. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Josh Uche get some snaps here and there as a rotational edge guy in this Eagles defense. Which takes me to our last camp battle. I wouldn't be surprised. So I was talking to my one buddy who is a quarterback at a D1 college, and we were specifically both watching the quarterback, and I mentioned to him the quarterback 3 battle, and I wanted to get his thoughts on it. Between DTR, or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, versus Kyle McCord. And both of us kind of agreed that Kyle McCord seemed like he had more confidence in his throwing ability. He had more zip behind his ball, and he also had more command of his ball. Dorian Thompson-Robinson missed quite a few targets quite a few times, and he also got more snaps than Kyle McCord. But we both agree that at the end of the day, it feels like Dorian Thompson-Robinson will ultimately be a practice squad guy while Kyle McCord makes the active roster. But that, just because that's our opinion doesn't mean that that's actually what's going to happen. But as of right now, it just feels like Kyle McCord is the safer choice out of the two. Alright, so getting to some news from around the league. Rookies like Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jihad Campbell, and Travis Hunter all shine during their rookie preseason debuts. Now, I don't exactly have like the stat lines in front of me this second. Let me see. So let's look at the first overall pick, Cam Ward. How did he do? I felt like he looked poised in the pocket. Although he only played, I believe, the first quarter, he still looked fairly confident in the pocket and delivering passes to Calvin Ridley. Those two seem to have a sharp connection, and I feel like, let's see, Calvin Ridley had 3 receptions for 50 yards, and Cam Ward went 5 for 8 for 67 yards. Did not pass a touchdown, but also didn't throw an interception, which is fairly important for this showdown, for this number 1 overall pick. But talking about another highly touted rookie quarterback, we have Shedeur Sanders, who got the start with the Cleveland Browns last Friday. Shedeur Sanders showed out a bunch. I believe he played the first half. And he went 14 for 23, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 carries for 19 yards on the ground. So, again, another fairly impressive game for this underrated talent. And I do feel like that at the end of the day, he could ultimately make the starting roster and make a push mid-season for the starting QB spot. Travis Hunter did play both sides of the ball and did play fairly well, besides for that one play where he looks like he's getting stiff-armed into the ground. Receiving, he had 2 receptions for 9 yards. And defensively, where did he go? Where are you? That's weird. He had like 8 snaps, but it seems like he didn't register any tackles or anything. But he still took snaps, and it was more situational. He wasn't brought in immediately on the defense. So ultimately, probably giving us a sign that Travis Hunter will play the majority on offense, and then certain packages will come in and play on defense. But that won't always be the case. And then Jahad Campbell did fairly well for this Eagles team last week. Where's his stat? Oh, this is the Bengals. Where are my Eagles? There we go. Jahad Campbell had, where is it? He had 3 tackle assists. I thought he had 1 solo tackle as well, so I feel like this might be off. And he almost had 1 interception as well. Went straight through his hands, and it was his first time. So, ultimately, I do feel like he will sharpen up for the next time that he gets that possibility. But while you had rookies shining like the aforementioned rookies before, you also had some that had some stinker debuts. One being Ashton Jeanty, the running back for the Raiders. He had 3 carries for -1 yards. And same thing went for Tyler Shough. I actually was watching this game a little bit during open practice. Oh, wow, he actually had a better performance than I thought. He went 15 for 22, 165 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick six as well. So, ultimately, and it doesn't seem like he really rushed at all. So, he was more of a pocket passer, and he was able to deliver a solid ball. And he was able to have more passing yards than Shedeur and Cam Ward. So, he probably also played longer. I think he played the first half, maybe. But ultimately, he got some starter reps, which is fairly important for him at this point in this battle between him and Spencer Rattler. Alright, just for time's sake, I'm going to cut a couple different smaller stories that really don't have any impact on anything. There really wasn't too many major pieces of news coming out of the NFL this past week like there were last week. But there are some more contract news that we will get into in a moment. So I wanted to go over this year. I know that I didn't do this, obviously, last year. So this year I wanted to give y'all my record predictions, giving ceilings and floors to a bunch of different teams, that more being starting out with the NFC and AFC West, who I think will come in first, second, third, and fourth, and giving different ceilings and floors. So best case scenarios for this team and worst case scenarios as well. Alright, so first off, we're going to start off in the NFC with the 49ers. Now, the 49ers kind of have an easier schedule than most of their division. Not to say that they don't have hard games. Obviously, they have to play divisional games. They have to play against the Rams, Cardinals, and Seahawks, all of which could be solid teams. They also have to play against teams like the Buccaneers, Texans, and Chargers as well. Or not Chargers, my apologies, and Jaguars as well. So these are all teams that could be good, could be bad. It really depends on what season that they're having and how competitive they can be against this 49ers team. If everything goes right for this 49ers team, I could seriously see them going 12-5 and contending for the number 1 seed in the NFC. Obviously, there are some tough games like the Buccaneers, Texans, where they're probably going to drop some. Same with interdivisional games. Plus, they won't have Brandon Ayuk till like week 6, so that's going to leave them open early on to get locked down on offense, especially by corners covering wide receivers. Injuries will continue to be a problem for this team. They continue to pile up, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So that is something to watch. If things continue to compile and they can't string some games along, and they ultimately give up games that they should win, like the Jaguars, the Bears, the Falcons, if they give up 2 games to the Rams, who could be a Super Bowl contender, and if they give up maybe a game to the Cardinals, a game to the Seahawks, they could be looking at a floor of 9-8. Ultimately, I don't feel like this 9-8 floor is too horrible for them. They could still possibly contend for a wild card spot if they're able to put something together. If they land right in the middle of their ceiling and their floor, they could still be a wild card team. But ultimately, I do feel like that this could be a bounce back year for this 49ers team if everybody can stay healthy. That is the most important part. And if that can happen, they could ultimately become a threat in the NFC. Talking about their, I guess you could say, older brother at this point, being the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I have their ceiling a little bit less than the 49ers at 11-6. Obviously, they're going to play a lot more difficult teams than the 49ers because they had a better record last year. They play the Texans, Eagles, 49ers, Ravens, Jaguars, Buccaneers, Seahawks, Lions, and Falcons. So, ultimately, I do feel like that if they find a way to win, that they can be atop this NFC West again. One concern. Matthew Stafford was supposed to report to training camp for his first day of practice back since his back injury on Monday, August 11th. As of recording this, this is Wednesday, August 13th, and we still have no update on where Matthew Stafford is. He never showed up to practice, so it is still theorized that he's dealing with his back injury, which means that there's a higher chance that this is a bigger story than the Rams are letting on. And ultimately, that means that this could majorly impact how this Rams team starts. Because if they have Jimmy Garoppolo under center week 1, I am way less confident than if they have Matthew Stafford under center. I mean, looking at some of the games they have, let's say, worst case scenario, Matthew Stafford misses the first 3 weeks of the season. They play the Texans, that would be a loss. They play the Titans, that would be a win. They play the Eagles, that would be a loss. So unless Matthew Stafford gets in and actually starts taking reps and building chemistry with his new wide receiver Davante Adams and keeping Puka Nacua on pace, I do feel like that there's a larger chance that they could start sliding into their floor, that being 7-10. Obviously, I listed a lot of the hard teams that they're going to play. Eagles, Ravens, Lions, all these guys, Buccaneers, all these guys were playoff teams last year. You have the Jaguars, you have the Seahawks, you have the Falcons, and you have the 49ers, you have the Cardinals, all of which could be playoff caliber teams this year if they can put together and be competitive. Ultimately, I would not be shocked if they are closer to their ceiling than their floor at 11-6. But if Matthew Stafford misses some time in the start of the season due to his back, we could ultimately see the Rams slide a little bit down to their floor of 7-10. All right, heading up north to their Seattle, their rainy division rival, the Seahawks are a very interesting team to me. They can be at their best be a playoff contender. But they have to fix up this O-line, and they have to run the ball more consistently. Looking at some of the teams that they play all their divisional guys, all right? They play the Steelers, they play the Buccaneers, they play the Jags, they play the Texans, they play the Commanders. They play the Vikings, they play the the Falcons. So all of these teams could be playoff contenders this year. But that doesn't mean that I don't have confidence in Todd, or who's their, it's McDonald, right? Who's their head coach? Seahawks head coach. Mike McDonald. That's it. I do have confidence in McDonald and his defense here. It's more, what can Sam Darnold do to up the level of play from Geno Smith to the next level. That's what it's going to take for the Seahawks to be a playoff contender, period. Is Sam Darnold is going to have to step up and take a leadership role and be able to build chemistry with Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. Kenneth Walker really has to have a breakout season this year. He has to rush for over 1,000 yards. Closer to 1,200. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there. And, sorry about that. And ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if we see this O-line take a step forward and protect Sam Darnold a little bit more than they were able to for Geno Smith last year. With all that said, I see the Seahawks ultimately having a ceiling of 10-7 if everything goes right, and they're able to beat some teams that maybe are a shocker, like the Commanders, like the Vikings, like the Steelers. If they're able to beat these teams, then they can ultimately propel themselves to 10-7, in my eyes. If they let some of these games slip, like maybe losing more than they should, maybe getting swept by the Rams, getting swept by the 49ers, maybe splitting with the Cardinals, or maybe losing like a game or two that they shouldn't, like to the Colts, we could see them slip down to a floor of 6-11. And ultimately, that might be their offensive line's fault, but that's going to be a wait and see. Finally, the last NFC West team we have to cover is the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals are an interesting spot here. They have the possibility of being a playoff contender if Kyler can put everything together. And my ceiling doesn't exactly project that, but if they go beyond what I predict, I wouldn't be surprised if we could see them in the wild card, if not even further. Looking at it, the Cardinals play some difficult teams outside of their division, that being like the Cowboys, Jaguars, Buccaneers, Texans, Bengals, and Falcons. All of these teams could be making a push for the playoffs this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they drop a few of these games. But if they're able to put some wins together and they're able to beat some teams that you wouldn't expect, like the Packers, like the Cowgirls, like the Texans, against some of their division rivals, even if they sweep one or two of them, they could end up somewhere above my ceiling of 9-8. But as of right now, just based off of how I feel and based off of how the rest of the division shakes out this season, I feel like 9-8 is a safe ceiling to predict for this team, with a floor of 5-12. Ultimately, that not getting them into the playoffs wouldn't be a huge shocker continuing is it like a 3 or 4 year playoff drought for the Cardinals, and maybe even forcing them into a rebuild process. Who even knows? But that's wait to be seen. Switching over to the AFC, I'm going to make this a little bit quicker now instead of rambling on too much. Let's go with the rain. Actually, we'll go top to bottom. Actually, timeout. Rambling a little bit. I do apologize for that. So if everything is to shake out how I thought in the NFC West, it would go 40. If everybody hit their ceiling, it would be 49ers at 1, Rams at 2, Seahawks at 3, Cardinals at 4. In the AFC, let's look at the Chiefs. They play a lot of difficult teams, especially early on. Chargers week 1, Eagles week 2, Ravens week 4, Jaguars week 5, Lions week 6, Commanders week 8, Bills week 9, and obviously all their division. So there is a chance that the Chiefs lose a bunch of games against teams that were in the playoffs last year if they remain to be competitive themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs find a way to pull out some of these wins, and I gave them a ceiling of 11-6. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs pull out some games, real close games, and ultimately find ways to win against good teams. As simple as that. I can't really go into it any more than that. Their floor, I gave them a 7-10 record. That's if some of this magic starts to fade a little bit and some of these close games swing the other way. And they have harder teams in their division, though that hasn't stopped them in the past. All these teams have started to gear up a little bit to go after the Chiefs at their weakest. So if they start to lose to some of their division and lose to some of these playoff teams, I wouldn't be surprised if they sit at 10-7. Next up, we're going to look at the Denver Broncos. Now, the Broncos, I have a higher ceiling than the Chiefs for. I have them at 12-5 if everything goes right. They play some playoff teams like the Chargers, Bengals, Eagles, Cowboys, Texans, obviously Chiefs, Commanders, Packers. So it's not going to be easy. But if any defense is going to be able to lock down some of these high efficiency offenses, it's going to be this Denver defense behind Sean Payton. This defense added some more pieces like Dre Greenlaw, like Tella Ufunga from the 49ers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them make a push for the division lead this year. If everything goes wrong, I could see them ending up at a 10-7 floor. Obviously, some of these games are going to be hard to win against some good playoff contender teams. So ultimately, if things don't swing the Broncos' way, then they could end up at the same floor as the Chiefs, ultimately bringing it down to if these two end up at 7-10, that whoever wins their matchups will ultimately win the division. All right, we're going to speed through the Chargers here because there's not too much to talk about. Chargers were a playoff team last year, have the chance of being a playoff team again this year. They play some more difficult teams outside of their division, that being like the Commanders, Eagles, Steelers, Jaguars, Texans, Cowboys. These teams all could put up a fight against the Chargers, forcing them, if they don't win some of these games, forcing them down to a floor of 6-11. But if they're able to pull out some of these wins, and if they're able to play well within their own division, I feel like they can end up at a ceiling of 10-7. Ultimately, maybe forcing the Chiefs to step on the gas a little bit, but ultimately I do feel like the Chargers will find a way to win some games within their division and also find some ways to win games against other playoff teams. Justin Herbert has to prove it. Jim Harbaugh has to get his guy right, or else we might be looking at an interesting situation during the offseason if they hit their floor of 6-11. Raiders, not too much to say. They're looking like a solid team, but I want to see more of them against better teams. I have their ceiling at 8-9. That's if everything goes right. They play some really difficult teams, and I'm just not sure how well this offensive line and defensive line can hold up. They play teams like the Commanders, Eagles, Cowboys, Bears, Jaguars, Texans. So a lot of good possible playoff teams again. So if they want to prove it, if they want to go beyond their ceiling, they're going to have to pull out some of these wins where I just don't see any possibility of them coming out on top. I have their floor set at 5-12. If everything goes wrong and they're not able to win too many games within their own division and outside of their own division, I do feel like that they could be sitting at the bottom of the league again. So for the AFC West, if everything goes right for all these teams, I have the Broncos sitting at 12-5, Chiefs at 11-6, Chargers at 10-7, and Raiders at 8-9. Most of these guys would be a playoff contender if they were to end this way in the AFC. All right, so let's go into some hold-ins. I can't really call it hold-ins and hold-outs because everybody's holding in now. We do have an update from Bills training camp, that being that Bills running back James Cook, who walked out of practice last weekend, officially came to practice today, and he signed a deal which is being described as a 4-year, $48 million deal with $30 million guaranteed, putting him just a little bit underneath Saquon Barkley after Saquon signed the extension. So that's fair money. Cook has been one of the top 5 running backs in the league, in my opinion, over the last few years. So this is really well earned by him. And again, like I said last week, we had never seen a player hold out from Bills training camp underneath Brandon Beane, the general manager, who had been a general manager for the Bills for the past 9 years. So I do feel like that this is a good sign for the Bills culture as a whole, that if you show up, you perform, and even if you're not our top guy, i.e. Josh Allen, you will still get paid the money that you deserve because you've earned it. So, honestly, good stuff to both the Bills and James Cook. Congratulations to James Cook, who will be a Bill for the next 5 years. Obviously, he'll have to play out one more year on his rookie contract, and then this 4-year, $48 million deal will kick in. So congratulations to James Cook for coming off of the hold-ins list and joining Kyren Williams as a top-paid running back. So Micah Parsons, there is still no news or movement on that side of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing if we see him getting paid week 1. But Jerry Jones has even made allusions to maybe he's not going to be ready for week 1 because he won't get paid by then. So and they're not looking to move him either. So it's a really strange situation, which kind of ties into Big Trouble in Big D. There's really been no movement, which is weird for Dallas when it comes to a superstar holding out. Normally you hear things are happening behind the scenes, and eventually the guy gets signed a little bit before week 1 or the first game of week 1. So I do feel like that something's off here, more than we thought. And Micah Parsons is really creating a bigger stink behind the scenes in Dallas. So that was like a mini Big Trouble in Big D, I guess. But that's all we know so far on Micah Parsons in hold-ins. Trey Hendrickson seems to be moving closer, barely, but inching closer every day to a new deal with the Bengals. So there has been movement behind the scenes. So ultimately, it seems like the only problem left is guaranteed money, which at the end of the day, the team will ultimately bend to that. I can almost 100% guarantee that. So I wouldn't be surprised within the next week we see Trey Hendrickson back at practice, and then week 1 we see him suited up, ready to go for the Bengals. Another weird situation is Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin is still holding in at practice. Apparently, it's being rumored that the Commanders and Terry McLaurin are still very far apart on where they want to be for a new deal. That is fairly concerning, and the clock is ticking for week 1. And if Terry McLaurin is not there week 1, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear by week 3 or week 4 that he is on the move to a new team. He seems very disgruntled, and he ultimately seems like he wants out of Washington now. It's not really a question of how much, it's a question of when he's going to be out. It seems like the Commanders are not really bending to Terry McLaurin's wants, and that is slightly concerning, especially for future players looking for future deals like Brian Robinson Jr. Jaden Daniels is obviously going to get the bag because he's like their generational guy, so that's not even a question. But I do feel like that Terry McLaurin will ultimately get traded by week 3 or week 4 of the regular season, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's to somewhere like the Tennessee Titans or the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, yeah, that's all the news that we have on Terry McLaurin. I wish we had more, but it seems like they're so far apart on contract talks that nothing's come to pass at this minute. So that's been all the news that we can cover for today. I want to thank you guys for listening to this longer episode. Hopefully we start to get to these longer episodes now that we are closer to the season. And once we're in the season, we'll have full-length hour-plus episodes like we used to have. So, again, I want to thank you all for listening. And hopefully we can keep growing. We've had a lot of growth, especially in the views department over the past few weeks. So I want to thank you guys again for everything that you guys do for me. And I hope to see you guys or again next week. And until then, I've been Matt, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day. And remember, go Birds.